Hey everyone, and welcome to the Makoreactor Meta Monday. Sorry for having a short break before. I've been ill, having no voice. I still have a little bit left of it, but that's fine. We were in Düsseldorf last weekend, and I've been ill ever since. I was ill even at the event, but we had a lot of fun. The community in Germany was fantastic despite us not speaking a whole lot of German. It was really a lot of fun. We came there as two Swedes, and there were only, I think, 3 or 4 people not from Germany during that event, so there were not a whole lot of international guests, but the people there welcomed us great, and we had a really good time. Joel, my friend, also working for Makoreactor, helping me out with articles and decks and all sorts of playtesting and stuff, he actually managed to win the event, so that was really impressive, and with a deck that we had tried out before, so that was interesting. Very well played by him. We're going to make a short tournament report later, so definitely watch that. But today we are going to take a look at tournament preparation, because that is something that is really important. Everyone is thinking about these big tournaments, looking at them, scared about participating, or maybe participating but feeling very insecure. You go into that tournament and feeling like, did I really pick the right deck? Shouldn't I pick this deck instead? Will I really have a really good shot at winning this tournament? Everyone feels really anxious about their choices. Even the players who have been at several tournaments feel insecure. And that's just how it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to prepare to make sure that you have the best possible chance at winning the tournament. Let's start with taking like a short overview of what we're going to go through, and this is going to take a while to talk about. So this is a little more like a podcast, and it's going to take a while to go through everything. But we're going to talk about it from the beginning. We're going to go quickly through what I think are the best ways to win. Like, how do I actually win? Who will win? What do I need to win? Can I predict how well it's going to go? Things like that. And then we're going to go through the mentality. Like, what is my mindset supposed to be going into the tournament? Because it takes a lot of stress going into a tournament. It's a lot of pressure, and everyone feels nervous, and you're worried about choices, you're worried about traveling. There are so many more things going on than just like playing the game. And then we're gonna go through deck choices, and I think we're also gonna talk a little bit about what to bring to a tournament. But the most important things, of course, that's what everyone is aiming for, and why you're so nervous in the first place, because losing is fine, but imagine if I could actually win. Like, how do I get there? So most people entering a tournament obviously will not win, but there are a lot of people who will have a chance at winning. But the people who have the biggest chance at winning are people who, in my opinion, are covering most of these 5 areas quite well. It takes a lot of preparation to actually win a tournament. It takes a lot of preparation, you have to playtest a lot, you have to go through a lot of things, so that is one area we're going to cover later, but it takes a lot of preparation to a tournament. You can't just sign up for a tournament and expect to do well. There needs to be research done, playtesting a lot, and if you are playing this game a lot, this comes kind of naturally. So it might not take that much, but if you add it together, all the times you've played with like a similar deck or what you expect to be facing, that is part of preparation. So preparation is a huge step in order to win a tournament. It really can't be stressed enough how much preparation the winners generally have been having. You also need to be quite skilled at the game. You have to understand all the rules, how to use the stack properly, when to use abilities, the final perfect moment to topple your foe. It also requires, like the poker face kind of game. You need to put the pressure onto your opponent and have them worrying about your cards. Things like that. You really have to have solid gaming skills overall to have a good shot at winning. But you still might make it anyway. And that's because luck is also there. You have to be kind of lucky at the tournament. If you draw a blank on your first turn, you're severely impacted. You can reduce luck a lot by making a good deck that search a lot, for example, that thins out cards you don't need out of the deck. For example, the new Final Fantasy IX deck does that. So you can reduce the luck portion of the deck by quite a bit, but EX bursts and things are always a factor, and the start hand has a huge impact on the game, and that cannot be denied. In this game, fortunately, we draw a lot of cards, 2 per turn, and that really helps in reducing the luck portion a little bit. But EX bursts were added, for example, to this game, so there are a lot of luck portions added anyway. We can't get rid of it. It is luck based, this game. It is a card game. You don't choose the cards you draw, so that is also very important. You have to have a kind of a good day to be able to win the tournament. But there are a lot of choices we have to make that we can actually affect, and that is mostly deck choices, and that is related to the deck, like which elements did I choose, which kind of archetype do I make the deck out of. Am I making like a really speedy deck to counter these slow mid-range decks that goes for like Minwu, Maria, Aerith kind of start before they get going? Can I punish that perhaps, or am I going for that like the late game plan? Like the overall deck choices are very, very, very important, and that can be very difficult because everyone is thinking about that, so that's going to be very, very difficult. And then there are the great choices among cards as well. You have to make meta calls. Is really this Balthier gonna do great today? Is it gonna be very relevant every game? Or is Waka going to be the card to bring? Am I gonna increase the Waka or decrease the Tidus? That's very difficult. So that is among the most difficult choices in my opinion. You have to go for making choices. You have to actively say, no, I don't need this, yes, I need that to win. So you actively have to go in and make these individual card choices, not based on a net deck, but out of actual testing. So that's going to take a lot of time. But these 5 things, in my opinion: card choices inside the deck, and then the deck choices like overall deck design, luck base, skill set, and preparation. These are the things we can like manage, these 5 parts. These are the things we can change actively. We can reduce how much luck impacts the game, we can practice our skills, we can prepare well, and we can make solid deck and card choices. So we can actually affect who will win the tournament quite a bit, in my opinion. But that being said, even if you do all of these things and practice like a month before, 3 months before, of course there is no guarantee that you will win, but you have a very good shot at scoring top, because not everyone will practice as much as you do. Then it's all down to the cards. But let's start with the mentality, because the mentality is incredibly important going into a game like this. Everyone feels so nervous when they enter a tournament. There are so many things to think about that you just, some people just bail and go thinking like, I'm not gonna win the regionals anyway, so there's no point. Or the regionals is such a big competition, so why should I enter? I'm not even winning my locals perhaps, or perhaps I'm only sometimes winning my locals. I don't really dare go into the big scene, things like that. People worry too much overall, and what you're gonna have to do is just trying it out. Just try to enter a tournament. It's really a lot of fun, because there are going to be like 40, 50, 60 or 100 people with the same mindset as you. Everyone is nervous, everyone loves Final Fantasy, most really like card gaming in general. There are so many things in common here that you have a lot of ground to build on. So I think just going for it is the best mentality ever. Just try it out and really enjoy the tournament. You are really not going to sort of regret it, because the regionals are a lot of fun. And if you're worried, always keep in mind that it's an experience. So if you go to regionals the first time, it's going to be a learning experience. The second time you go to regionals, you're going to feel a little bit less nervous, and the third big tournament you enter is really gonna feel a lot better. You've done this before, you've done the deck checks, you've like entered tournaments before, you've felt nervous before, you know how you handle stress, for example. These kind of things are really important, so just going for it and having it as a learning experience is very, very important. And most importantly, just try to really enjoy the tournament, because that is what it's all about. This is a card game, it's a hobby. We do this because we like it. We really like this card game, so you have to put effort into it to really just like enjoying it. Just play a game, play a kind of deck you like, so play your favorite archetype, perhaps include your favorite character. Don't go overboard with just making like a fun kind of deck. Make it competitive, but in your way, so you like to play it. That is very nice indeed, and just focus on the social experience as well, like making new friends and meeting people like from other countries and other parts of your country perhaps, who are into the same game as you are. This is a very small subculture, so like really growing your contact network within the game is very important as well. You really get to get new friends and have a lot of fun at the tournament. So that is why I travel like cross country, to meet with people and really just enjoy this game, because that's what I think it is, a really good game. So what you bring to a tournament? Well, that's very difficult, to be honest. There are a lot of things you should be bringing. You should be bringing like pen and paper to make notes in between games, for example. You're not allowed to take notes during the games, but you're gonna have to write deck lists, for example, and gonna sign papers. While this is generally provided, it's very handy to have on your own. You should also be bringing things like dice. If you would like it, bring extra dice for markers, bring tokens for freeze. These things are allowed at the very least at the moment. So bring what you need in terms of game like accessories. It's very handy to have. But very important that people usually forget is bringing some energy to the tournament. Really something that makes me perform worse is 6 hours of gaming without energy. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is bringing something that is not so heavy on sugar, because sugar levels go high and then they go kind of low and you start underperforming. It affects your mood as well, so definitely bring something that isn't heavy on sugar. Go for something like, I really like, for example, different mixes of nuts, for example. Chocolate is kind of okay. It's often like allergies though in big tournaments, so like try to take it outside, for example, if possible. Also bring drinks. The best drinks, in my opinion, that I use are sugar-free energy drinks. They're very nice. They don't give you that sugar spike and the crash after, so they're kind of nice. And they include a lot of caffeine, which I desperately need. If you don't, water is very nice. So bringing some sort of drink to the venue is very good. They often sell it, but bring some to be sure. Extra sleeves. Always bring extra sleeves, like 100 extra sleeves, because that's really important. You might be forced to change all your sleeves, for example, or change marked or damaged sleeves during the tournament. So always bring extra sleeves. Definitely always do it. If you're running like over sleeves and under sleeves and inner sleeves, things like that, bring normal sleeves as well, to be sure. It's really important and very frustrating thing to lose on. And always bring a deck list to the venue, and count your cards beforehand a few times. Always go through everything just before you go. It's really important, just going through everything basically, like one extra time, and that's why I bring a deck list. And then I can just write from the deck list to the official deck list if required. I often ask the venue as well beforehand if I can get the deck list, so I can write it beforehand. It's very nice. It's a good part of preparation, so I don't have a lot to do at the venue. It kind of decreases nervosity, not having so much to do before you can go. Playtesting is probably the most important things people underestimate and people don't do properly, and that is a very, very big problem. Playtesting is basically where you learn your deck, you learn your weaknesses, you make a lot of notes and statistics about each matchup, and you figure out how it works in action. It is extremely important, and this is how you win, in my opinion. During playtesting, you notice if the deck will work or not. During playtesting, you learn if your advantage engines work or not. Things like that. It's incredibly important to playtest your deck thoroughly, and I think something like 50 to 100 games, at the very least, with a deck makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you've not really had a chance at making adjustments and sort of feeling the differences that the adjustments did. So even if you've chosen the colors and like the main advantage engines of your deck, you might be making smaller changes, and you have to sort of get a feel for it, because if you only have 1 copy or 2 copies, make a huge deal out of, like, especially in the mulligan, for example, putting a card in the bottom deck, things like that makes a lot of difference. So you really think about it before and playtest it a lot. During the early playtesting, when you've chosen your deck, the first thing you really gotta do is start experimenting with different things. You have to see what kind of combinations of cards work, and make the big changes now. Make the big changes early and just like get a feel for it, what the big differences of the changes made. How it affected the deck, what happened. It's really important to experiment early. I only experiment early and then kind of set the deck in stone and only make smaller adjustments later. It's very important to do, because you start making crazy changes last minute when you're nervous and everything is wrecked. Don't make last night changes. It's extremely important. During the playtesting, what you should be doing is bringing it to your locals. See how it matches up against your local kind of decks and the local meta, preferably the meta at the actual meta you'll be playing in, if it's possible at all. But sometimes you can't really practice against the meta. For example, when I went to Germany now with Jewel, there was no chance at finding out what the meta was like. So we had to practice against the net decks and our own local meta. And while that worked kind of fine, that is always a risk, because you don't really know what you're up against. And that is a scary prospect, not knowing. So what we did was practicing against all the recent net decks out of the west and the east. So we played against a lot of Japanese decks, like the Golbez variants, for example. A lot of aggressive decks like Mono Lightning, for example. We did a lot of practice against it. And we practiced against Water Wind, for example, and we practiced against the new Fire Water builds, a lot of FF9 practice, and totally expected it to be like a Final Fantasy IX meta. So that's what we did. We practiced against everything we were expecting to face, and that's how you should be preparing, because that is the best way to do it. Practice against what you think is meta. Figure out a way that can like beat the most matchups. If you feel like you can't beat Lightning and the Fire is a big problem, and the Water Wind decks kind of runs over you, well, you can't really bring that to the tournament, because you know there are plenty of those at the tournament. So bring a deck that has a good matchup against the most popular element combination. You can't bring a deck that will beat everything, of course, so try to make something that works against at least most matchups. Draw like a map of the matchups, is probably the best way to do it. So you write like Lightning is very important, Water Wind is very important, and like slow expensive mid-range is important, Golbez is important. Discard could be important. So like make a map of the most common matchups and just like how you do against them. Like, I can't handle Aerith and Emperor, for example. Well, then you're gonna find a way to defeat that. Things like that is very, very important. So play against all the recent net decks, for example, all the recent winning decks, and the local meta. See just how your deck does against them. So there's a lot of playtesting to be done, and you should be playtesting until you're tired of your deck. That's how much you should be playtesting. Well, the choice of deck is very, 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 very difficult. People are sitting 24/7 for weeks before the tournament. They just can't figure out what they should be playing. So I think the most important part, like the most important thing to do, is deciding upon something that you should see as a base concept. You should be thinking about something like, I think Golbez is the best card ever. Pick that, isolate it, like Golbez is what I'm gonna be doing, and then figure out like what is the best kind of things with Golbez. How have others done great with Golbez? And like what are Golbez's weaknesses? Build around this, like how is Golbez played best? Don't look around like a lot of other things. Focus on the main base kind of concept. Just look at that, focus on it, and go forward with that. That is the most important thing ever. Like, what does Golbez need to work? How will Golbez win the game for me? What kind of card does Golbez need to really work? Like in Golbez's case, I would probably be Gip of Delita is one way to play Golbez. I've seen people play Cloud of Darkness with Golbez. Overall, there are so many good ways with Golbez. Bringing forward Zidane is really important. A couple of haste forwards could be important if you're going to go for it. So just like pick a base concept. I'm gonna play Alcid Onion Knight as one of my main things to do to produce a lot of cards. And what do I need to make sure that these tiny forwards are relevant? Maybe that's Lulu R, for example, that gives them all 1000 power. And maybe that's Cyclops to make sure they can even trade against the big 8, 9 or 10k dudes. Try to really make a base concept and work on that really hard. Like, try to make the Alcid Onion Knight into a vicious engine that can really go through. You know, it can beat Minwu. It can beat targets that are dulled nearly. Like, you really have to plan around this to make sure it works in nearly all scenarios, or you're gonna have big trouble. So pick a base concept that you think is strong. For example, I recently thought that the Unariku Pain and the FFIX or FF9, what do you want to call it, are really strong concept, and so that's what I picked, FF9 and Unariku Pain as two advantage engines that could possibly work together, and it's been proved before and it really does work, so I wanted to make a deck out of that, so we picked that and we designed a deck around it. So pick a base concept, build upon it, cover a little bit of their weaknesses, and build a lot on their strength. Like, focus on the strength, how to make it an invincible murder machine. It will have weaknesses, of course it will. Cover the worst of those a little bit, but really go for its strength instead. That's my opinion. Try to skew the matchup in your favor. So what's the early game plan? So when you design the deck, you really should be looking at how the early game plan is looking like. What are your first drops gonna be? Do you have enough, for example, backup drops for the first place? Do you have plans on how to build upon your economy without losing tempo? For example, sitting there placing a Minwu passing turn, placing a Maria passing turn, and then starts building your forward. That's gonna be a problem. So how are you gonna deal with that? Perhaps the best way to do it is playing 2 cost, following up with a Searcher, so you have 3 backups, then you play a free Aerith to the field, and now suddenly you can use 2 forwards for a Maria, for example. 2 backups and the card for a Maria, making it kind of cheap. So that really works. But the early game plan is incredibly important. So what does your early game look like? If you didn't throw any good backups, do you have forwards you could play, for example? For example, the Lightning decks that have done really well are focusing on 2 different early game plans. If the cost curve on backups looks great, for example, you drew maybe, I don't know, a Black Mage or a Devout or something like that, you could just like play to the field, preferably 2, and then a Devout on your second turn is the best move. But if you can't, perhaps just playing a forward or 2 really put some pressure on your opponent and stating that maybe you got better backups than I got, but I'll just play 2 strong forwards like the X-Death and Reaper, for example, Capricious Reaper. That is a really good way to turn things around and increasing the odds in your favor. If you didn't draw 2 backups, just play 2 forwards instead. Put the ball on your opponent's playfield and say that they have to respond now. They can't sit there building economy. You put 2 huge forward threats on your side of the field. They now have to match your forwards. They can't just sit there putting out backups. They're gonna lose. But how to really, the early game is important, but early game isn't everything. You really get to the late game at some point, where you're both at 3 to 5 backups. That should always be the goal. You really need to be able to play backups in this game. I don't think 0 backups is so competitive. I think you should always be able to punish that kind of deck without too much effort. You generally see in competitive play that the good players are having 3 to 5 backups at the end of the game. And they should be able to be played while putting pressure on your opponent. I think Seymour is a perfect example of this. By playing a backup I just immediately affected my opponent's side of the board. So if we both have 2 forwards and 2 backups, I can play Seymour to increase my backup resources while attacking your forwards. And that is very, very important, and that makes cards like Rauban, Seymour and all of these cards so incredibly strong. Because a backup for most decks are just economy. They may have some sort of thing that they could be doing, like you could red mage something turn 5 to be able to go through for damage. Very nice, but it didn't do anything now, and that's the difference. Lightning decks are so scary because of Seymour Black Mage, Fusoya Magus. Like, you could be playing a forward and they just broke it by building economy, and that is a very scary prospect indeed. So what's your late game plan? How will you get to the late game, and will you actually win the late game? Is your deck stronger in the late game than theirs? Can you handle Maria, Tidus, Waka and the 2 other forwards? Can you handle this type of pressure? Or should you be focusing at keeping the tempo so high that your opponent won't be able to build that big board? Maybe that should be the game plan. You really have to consider that and like look at your games. Did I feel behind in the early game? Did I feel behind in the late game? How did it feel? And that's very important. Like, analyze it properly and think about it. If your deck is bad in the late game, you're really gonna have to put up some aggression early game and keep the tempo high and in your favor so that you are strong in the early game. Fine. While building backups, Lightning is extremely strong, especially when you're running a lot of these on-play backups. But when you have 5 backups, it suddenly drops off. Maybe you have Alcid on the field, it suddenly drops off a lot. So how will you get through their defenses? You really have to plan these things ahead. Any deck should also be having win conditions. Win conditions can be something so simple as, I build so many forwards and I build them so quickly that you're gonna be having trouble keeping up. Fine, that's cool. But I'm also gonna have to end the game in my favor, so I need a tempo play. We're talking maybe Shiva to dull and freeze, the biggest forward played that I can't really deal with. Or Red Mage to completely ignore a forward and prevent it from blocking, that kind of thing. Maybe that kind of thing is your win condition. High tempo with a lot of forwards and ways to prevent you from blocking. That is a simple win condition. But win conditions could also be something like 1 cost Yuffie, for example, that did great for my friend in Düsseldorf. It can't be blocked by big cards, and most people are only running big cards. There are small cards, but they are a lot cheaper to remove, so that's not too bad. That's a very interesting win condition as well. We're looking at a lot of things here though. So Shuntoro could be a win condition. If your opponent overextends, they are punished hard by Shuntoro and you proceed to win the game. Very nice. There are also things like Rinoa, for example. If they can't handle Rinoa, well, they're gonna have to break her. They either have to stop attacking or stop blocking Rinoa, for example, or have a smaller card than Rinoa to make sure she is like not broken. But you can break Rinoa yourself, so don't worry. But you really need to have win conditions. Any win condition in a deck is a chance that you achieve victory by simply achieving your own win condition. Like, my win condition can be interrupted. They might kill my 1 cost Yuffie, or they might like bounce my Rinoa, but it was still a chance that ending the game in my favor by simply having a win condition planned out. If a deck, for example, would include a lot of win conditions, the chances are obviously increased, but try to not spread it too thin and focus on like increasing the chances of a few win conditions, like running 3 Rinoa, for example, and maybe a couple of ways to break her if you have to. Things like that could be really handy. So always try to incorporate at least a win condition or 2 in a deck. These are just things I think about before I enter a tournament, like what I want to do before a tournament, like proper playtesting of the deck, going into the tournament with the right mindset and mentality, bringing the right things to the tournament, and making a solid deck with good meta calls. These are the kind of things I want to bring to a tournament to feel that I have the best shot available. So I think that is a really important thing to do. But that was it for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll have a good time. Goodbye.